Welcome to the Friday, February 5th edition of the SVG-TV News. I am Khalil Cato with the details. Minister of Health, Wellness and the Environment, Sinclair Prince, today declared that St. Vincent and the Grenadines now has community spread of the COVID-19 virus. Yesterday, SVG recorded its highest number of cases in a day since March 2020, with 103 new confirmed cases. To date, the country has recorded a total of 1,170 cases of the virus, with 790 active. At a virtual press briefing this afternoon, the Minister of Health said that the community spread classification was based on new information gathered on COVID-19 cases in the country.
Routine screening and testing of persons with flu symptoms, it has been determined that we have moved into a phase of community transmission, also referred to as community spread of COVID-19 here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. The cases, as reported in our last release, are clustered into families and the small social groups, including patrons of gambling sheds and rum shops. I take this opportunity to reassure you that this ministry will continue to take the appropriate measures aimed at reducing the transmission of COVID-19 and therefore the burden of disease on the health sector and the nation as a whole.
Minister Prince asked that citizens do their part to stay safe and encouraged church leaders and community leaders to set the example. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Simone Kieser-Beach said that following their analysis of data on contact tracing and samples tested, it was found that there are 1,021 local cases of COVID-19 and that the majority were from contacts of positive cases.
194 of these cases are from contacts of known positives. 177 are from persons who presented with flu-like symptoms and tested positive for COVID-19. 47 of the persons who are in this group of 1021 have been found to be positive on exit screening. That's persons who are leaving the country. We also have 303 persons who tested positive. However, their forms did not indicate the reason for screening, and it might be that they were part of some random screening that we had done earlier. So while we have many new clusters in terms of families and meeting places, this pattern of transmission is consistent with community spread.
The CMO said that samples collected from January 16th to February 4th were in backlog, thus the high figures of recent. She, however, noted that the cases have been that the cases would have been reduced if they were to be recorded daily.
And you would notice that between January the 11th, we went from an incidence of 6.6% to 15.7% on January the 21st. 16.6% on January the 28th, and 15.3% on January the 30th. Testing from samples from February the 1st and 2nd thus far have given rates of 2.7% and 3.2% respectively. For the 3rd of February, we had 2 cases positive, and for the 4th, yesterday, 1 case tested positive. Given the incubation period of 14 days, we anticipate that we might see increased rates of COVID-19 around from January 24th, 28th coming back down. So we anticipate that we should be seeing some new cases.
With community spread of COVID-19 now declared in SVG, new measures have been implemented to strengthen the enforcement of the existing protocols to stem the spread of the virus. Medical Officer Dr. Roger Duncan said there will be a ticketing system to support mandatory mask wearing in public transportation and in public and private establishments to which the public has access.
The public health actions, therefore, include, though not limited to, we're recommending, we're going to make it mandatory that masks be worn in all public vehicles. Secondly, the number of persons allowed public transportation is going to be decreased by half. Including in this half would be both the conductor and the driver.
Dr. Duncan said there will also be the enforcement of mass gathering protocols with particular emphasis on bars, gambling sheds and rum shops. He said these measures will be in place for the next 4 weeks.
There will be no in-house dining for public restaurants and bars. Takeaway services would be made available. The mass gathering protocols would be enforced. Not only for fetes and parties, but also to rum shops and other places of gathering, and they will be enforced. Masks must be worn in all public and private establishments to which the public has access. At the beginning, at this point, these measures will be in place for an initial 4-week period and will be reviewed subsequently.
And with gambling sheds, rum shops and small social groups added to the cluster of cases of COVID-19 in SVG, our news team went around capital Kingstown today and spoke with some consumers of alcohol on this latest development and to get a sense of what they have been doing to protect themselves from contracting the virus.
Rum shops, gambling sheds, small social groups and families are now the new clusters where COVID-19 cases in SVG are said to be prevalent. SVG-TV News visited some of these places where it was business as usual. While some patrons were seen wearing a mask, some were incorrectly placed and there were those who did not have any. One proprietor said that he tries his best to comply with the protocols and demonstrated how some of his patrons usually consume alcohol without totally removing their mask.
Take off your mask. You take off your mask when you're drinking like this. We do like this, and we drink, and we put down. That's the best we could do for now.
And they sanitize?
Well, we have the hand sanitizer here and drink.
Similarly, people who smoke cannot do likewise with a mask on. Many believe that once they have on a mask, whether it is on their chin or head, they are safe from the virus, even though they were told that's not the case. They also feel that the strong rum helps kill the virus.
Because of the corona, more people who never used to drink strong rum drinking it now. Because they say strong rum good for the corona.
Oh wow.
Because you provide a heat with inside. And the corona ain't like heat.
Wearing a mask, but you know you have to take out your mask to drink.
No, you don't have to do that. You just pull it down from your face and you go and play. You about the sunset, so to go fight the corona, you see me. You see me? You want me to find out your best out.
One proprietor said that business is not the same as his profits have decreased since the start of the pandemic. A number of other persons who spoke to us off camera say more stringent measures should be put in place to reduce the spread of COVID-19 in this country. One man said that he lives with someone who has COVID-19 and there is no proper way of quarantining. He said he got tested for the virus and it came back negative after waiting more than a week for his result.
Packing up with people still, okay, you go to the hospital and you test for this thing, and when they tell you you're positive, you have nothing to take you home. You had a right van with people go home with it. I have a friend test positive and cry because she had a right van to go home among people. The government needs to have something to transport you when you go to the hospital and test for this thing.
Another said that when the COVID-19 vaccines arrive here, he will not be taking it as it is against his culture and religion.
We read about a vaccine for tree spirit. There's a vaccine that they make for capitalize black people's mind. And they will give poor community that where people are not take come. Where you must throw up on black people down in the crime now. Wow, look like garbage bin. Me not take that vaccine. The people are run. You see the white man vaccine, they're for governor, they're for control our mind. Rasta man no want to take that.
Reporting for SVG-TV News, Larissa Pogsley-Kidd.
$326,000 EC dollars has been budgeted for this year to provide infrastructural support to the Ministry of Health as part of the country's COVID-19 response. This was announced by Minister of Health, Wellness and the Environment, Sinclair Prince, during his contribution to the budget debate, on the 2021 budget in Parliament this week. Minister Prince highlighted two major programs which he said the ministry will be embarking on: the COVID-19 vaccination and health programs. The health minister said they also plan to build a modern bulk storage facility at Bentinck Square in Kingstown.
In the construction of a modern bulk storage facility on a recently acquired property and located at Bentinck Square. That's the three very old buildings in the Daddy Shop area, in that corner, Madam Speaker, and we intend to demolish them because they are dilapidated, most of it. We will do so soon. I think they were supposed to have started already. And then we will build on that a platform on which we will put containers, we will retrofit them, and we will have that as an emergency measure to ensure adequate bulk and cold storage and close proximity to the operations, because the lab is close by. It's very important, very strategic that we put the cold storage facilities close to the lab.
Minister Prince said they will also further expand the molecular lab to other sites, noting that it is a critical part of the monitoring process and therefore they have to ensure the lab is adequate for testing.
In this regard, the Ministry of Health proposes to further expand the lab capacity and testing sites to other places outside of the main lab. In this case, the existing molecular laboratory site, that's at the North Hospital at the moment, will be extended and outfitted with the necessary additional infrastructure and made operational. This process has already commenced. Of course, Madam Speaker, this is not the only advancement that we are doing for the lab. In terms of manpower, we have already acquired some 4 technologists from Cuba who will be helping in the lab. We also have asked for another extractor that will be used for processing the swabs so that people get their results quickly, etc., etc.
The health minister said that two other private labs will be joining the Ministry of Health in the testing process for COVID-19. He also noted that on Saturday, the Ministry of Health will receive another PCR testing extractor.
It's already in the public domain where we have asked at least 2 private labs to join us in this processing. Of course, they will charge a little bit more than we would charge at the public hospital. However, they are part of the process now, and the backlog, I've been advised, is dwindling. I've been told that the extractor that we got last week has been installed, and it has already been used, and it has taken off at least 2 hours from the processing time for these results.
The health minister said they are also looking at the renovation of the AIDS Secretariat building at Old Montrose to accommodate the 35-member Port Health Surveillance Team. He further noted that psychological support is also being provided for persons who are in quarantine or isolation. Prime Minister Dr. Ralph Gonsalves says that he is pondering on whether to take the Russian Sputnik COVID-19 vaccine. Earlier this week, 20 samples of the vaccine arrived in the state as part of a trial. Several frontline workers with the Ministry of Health, Wellness and the Environment have already taken the first shot of the vaccine, including infectious disease specialist Dr. Gerald Thompson. In Parliament on Thursday, Prime Minister Gonsalves said while he is qualified to take the vaccine, given his age, he did not want to jump the gun, and he is also praying about it.
So this morning, I've been giving it prayerful consideration. And I will sleep on it tonight again. And if tomorrow morning it comes to me that I should take it in a positive sign, I will take it. Because I understand that persons want to see the Prime Minister take the vaccine.
And SVG is expected to receive 45,600 AstraZeneca vaccines through the COVAX facility. This would cover 22,800 persons. The vaccines are expected to arrive in the state later this month. However, according to the Prime Minister, it is not likely that all the vaccines would be received.
For 20% of the population, the first tranche is going to be 1/4 of that. We should get that before the end of February. Now, I don't know whether this vaccine, and I feel that this 45,600, we may get it in drips and drabs over the year. So we have to look elsewhere. That's why I have authorized the chairperson of the Mustique Charitable Trust, Dora Lowenstein. She has been in close contact with the persons with AstraZeneca at Oxford. And the Mustique Charitable Trust has agreed to purchase vaccines up to a certain number for us. And I've requested that she, on our behalf, place the order for 100,000 vaccines of AstraZeneca.
PM Gonzalez said that arrangements have also been made for 70,000 vaccines from Russia, noting that 6,000 would be received as a donation from an intermediary. He also said SVG is seeking to source vaccines from Cuba, Africa, and India.
And they're setting up a credit line, a rolling vaccine bank of $1 million US. Cuba and Venezuela are very strong in that. And I'm hoping to see that the Cuban vaccine would go through their third stage of clinical trials to get there. And I've written off to my friend Prime Minister Modi in relation to if he can assist us in procuring AstraZeneca for up to 20,000 persons.
Lead scientist, that should be, and an update now on the La Soufrière volcano. Lead scientist monitoring the volcano, Dr. Thomas Christopher, on NBC Radio's face-to-face program this morning, shared some information on the likelihood of SVG experiencing a catastrophic eruption of the volcano. He was responding to a question posed by a concerned citizen.
Throughout a system's lifetime, it may go through a period, maybe a few thousand years or tens of thousands of years, where the style of eruptions are either violent or gentle, and then it switches to a different phase, which is either violent or gentle, opposite to whatever it is initially. I don't know enough about how big a punch Soufrière can throw in order to generate that sort of chaos that you've mentioned, and I don't think it's in a state to be able to do that. I wouldn't say it's impossible, but based on the recent eruptions that we've seen, or the historical eruptions that we've seen, it's not done anything like that. So we have no reason to believe that it will do something like that this time around. But I mean, to say that it's totally outlandish, that is probably not true. But it's very unlikely that this volcano would behave this way.
Dr. Christopher said residents in the communities which are in close proximity to the volcano may continue to see small fires as rising magma from the dome interacts with the dried vegetation inside the crater. A few weeks ago, residents on the leeward side of the island reported a glow from the volcano, sending some persons into panic mode.
Who's been up there knows that there's quite a bit of vegetation in the actual crater. So if the dome material, the fresh dome material, which is quite hot, when it's fresh, and I'm guessing it's probably around 700-800 degrees Celsius or even hotter, that could ignite dry vegetation.
And the National Emergency Management Organization, NEMO, is reminding the public that no evacuation order or notice has been given and continues to appeal to the public to desist from visiting the La Soufrière volcano, especially going into the crater, since doing so is extremely dangerous. NEMO said it will continue to provide regular updates on all activities taking place at La Soufrière. After a robust debate, the 2021 appropriation bill was passed in Parliament on Thursday night. The fiscal package, amounting to $1.21 billion, was presented by Finance Minister Camilo Gonzalez on Monday. Wrapping up the debate on Budget 2021, Minister Gonzalez said that with all the challenges facing SVG, they recognize that there will be an increase in the debt-to-GDP ratio this year. At the end of 2020, SVG's public debt stood at $1.9 billion, which is 12% more than the disbursed public debt for 2019. The finance minister said that the government will not leave the people to suffer and will do all they can to help them meet the challenges they may encounter.
The challenge, you have to do something about it. You can balance the books on the back of the people and leave the pain there, or you can have some numbers in brackets on your tally sheet, on your ledger for a year or two. Will our debt to GDP ratio go up in the near term? Yes, it will. Because our our GDP shrunk, so even if your debt stays the same, the ratio changes. The Eastern Caribbean Central Bank predicts that in some countries in our currency union, the debt to GDP ratio will exceed 120% next year. Not in ours. Not in ours. But the recognition is that the debt to GDP ratio is going to change across the currency union, across the Caribbean. Because countries faced with this challenge have to borrow. Luckily, we are in a position to borrow money at longer rates, lower interest rates and longer terms than some of our neighbors.
Minister Gonzalez said that the government has been working on plans to manage the country's debt to get it back down as quickly as possible.
And we would like our debt to be lower. But they recognize and we recognize that this year we had and we will have an increased debt. It's a fact, it's a reality. But what we're talking about is getting it back down as quickly as possible and on a downward trajectory. And that is why we have a fiscal responsibility framework. It was appended to the last budget speech last year. I've never heard a single member of the opposition reference the fiscal responsibility framework. But it's a critical piece of guidance to what we want to do. We publish medium-term debt strategies.
Meanwhile, opposition member of parliament for East Kingstown, Fitzgerald Bramble, said the government's approach to development is flawed. In his contribution to the budget debate, Bramble, who is a trained economist, said the country's economic growth continues to decline compared to other OECS countries even before the pandemic. He said that it is time the government faces the reality that it is not managing the affairs of the country properly.
And if we cannot accept and face the reality and the problem, how are we going to solve it? We cannot continuously bury our heads in the sand and say, oh, we are doing such a great job. It's not an indictment against you, but it is an indication that your approach to development is flawed. Because many of the stakeholders who could make a difference and who could improve our economic condition, they are not included in the process in a meaningful way.
Bramble said there are a number of Vincentians who are struggling to make ends meet, and had it not been for remittances, the people and the economy of SVG would be worse off.
Remittances, Madam Speaker, money that people send from overseas. I think last year that figure was what, $100 million or thereabout? $100 million. That's almost 10% of the budget. And with COVID creating such a havoc all around the world, it is going to be interesting to see what happens to that figure, because many of our friends and families overseas, they're feeling just as hard, feeling the pain just as much as we are here. So one would have to question their ability to continue sending money, we'd see.
The Ministry of Tourism and Culture is expecting to see a level of recovery in the local tourism industry within the next 18 months, barring any unforeseen circumstances. In his contribution to the 2021 budget debate on Wednesday, Minister of Tourism and Culture Carlos James said that experts have predicted that SVG, along with St. Lucia, are expected to be the markets with the fastest recovery rate based on their historical performance.
Taking arrival numbers back to 2019 numbers, and there's a prediction that by the year 2023 we will see some measure of movement upwards within the industry, Madam Speaker. And I'm specifically explaining this for those who are involved in the industry, those who are not only working but investing in the industry, so that they can have an appreciation that within the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, it is predicted that this country will be one of the fastest countries to recover, will be one of the countries to see an uptake by 2023, and this is barring, Madam Speaker, as I said, all of the other external factors that will contribute to a further decline.
James said the tourism industry has faced significant challenges because of the COVID-19 pandemic, noting that there has been a decline in all aspects of tourism, including a 0% rate of cruise ship arrivals.
in air arrivals, in yachting, in cruise tourism, in almost every single aspect of tourism in terms of our numbers, we have had declines. The Minister pointed out in his budget presentation, Madam Speaker, when you measure the corresponding period 2019 to 2020, we are down 92% in air arrivals, 90% in the drop in yachting. And Madam Speaker, cruise passenger arrivals, well, as everyone will notice, when you look out at the cruise ship boat, there's not a single cruise ship docked there, an indication that we're down to zero. Of course, Madam Speaker, these will have serious implications for our numbers economically.
The tourism minister noted that despite the challenges of the drastic decline in visitor arrivals, several hotels remained functional and were creative in keeping their doors opened.
Players both on mainland and the Grenadines remained operational. These properties maintain their tourism approved standards by the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Tourism Authority and are used as accommodations for arriving passengers as part of the Ministry of Health quarantine protocols for COVID-19. Again, Madam Speaker, I want to pause and thank and commend all of the industry players and partners, stakeholders, those hoteliers who remained open despite the challenges, those bars and restaurants that continue to operate despite the challenges, and those that continue to be innovative in the provision of their services. I want to thank you wholeheartedly.
Meanwhile, opposition Senator Israel Bruce said the government's plans for farmers are far-fetched from reality. Bruce told Parliament in his contribution to the budget debate that a number of programs are oftentimes outlined in the budget for farmers but are rarely manifested.
That's the reality of the farmers who are working hard. And I am saying that when the ministry says that one of its strategic priority is that of export-led growth, we must see the manifestation in what we do to support our farmers. If we don't do that, then we beg the question, Madam Speaker, who fooling who?
The opposition senator said while he supports the buy local idea, the government needs to put systems in place for farmers to be better able to market their produce.
That our local producers are struggling to display their food at such quality that they can compete. And if that is the case, I'm saying that the Ministry of Agriculture, if it is serious, and this government should give them all the support necessary to ensure that when their food go onto the shelves, that there could be at least some parity for the housewives to determine what they buy.
For over 29 years, Winston Papa Easton Lewis has been paying tribute to the late Jamaican reggae icon Robert Nesta Marley, better known as Bob Marley, on his birthday, February 6th. Marley was born in 1945 and died on May 11, 1981. Considered a global symbol of Jamaican music, culture, and identity, Marley was controversial in his outspoken support for the legalization of marijuana and an advocate for Pan-Africanism. In an interview with SVG-TV News Today, Papa Easton shared why he has been committed to celebrating the late reggae legend's birthday.
Well, because you see, when you really check out these songs that he sings, and where this man come from, you know what I mean, the ghetto, you know, and see this man running through the ghetto, and you know, you had no idea, never were thinking that this man will be today what he is, right? All his lyrics is real. It's not like something you see like a lot of the singers today, they sing a song and then it just lasts until tomorrow, you know what I mean? But then these songs, the more you listen to them, the more you hear them, it's like they just arrive.
Papa Easton also offered a musical piece in honor of what would have been Bob Marley's 76th birthday.
One night, let's get together and feel alright. together and feel alright. Whoa, 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 whoa. Let them all pass out there.